Hi everyone, I am Sam. Today we are going to talk about Memory Imagine, walking through a familiar neighborhood where you grew up. Every building, every tree, every small corner store triggers a flood of images, stories, and feelings. You might remember the scent of fresh bread from the bakery, the laughter of old friends calling you from across the street, the chalky feel of the sidewalk beneath your feet. These memories shape who you are, your sense of self, your personality, your relationships, your dreams. But have you ever wondered how these experiences get recorded inside your brain and later brought back to life, sometimes decades after they first happened? In today's video, we're going to take a journey into the fascinating world of memory. We'll explore what memory is, how it's formed, how it's stored, why it sometimes disappears when we need it most, and what all this can tell us about being human. Don't worry, we won't be diving deep into complicated academic jargon. Instead, we'll navigate these ideas using stories, simple examples, and a friendly narrative style. By the end, you'll have a clearer understanding of how your mind's memory time machine works. So what exactly is memory? At its core, memory is the mental process of taking in information, placing it somewhere safe inside your mind, and then pulling it out later when it's needed. It's like having a library in your brain. Every time you experience something new, reading a book, meeting a friend, learning a new skill, your mind writes down a record of that moment and files it away on one of the shelves. Later, when you try to remember it, your brain's librarian has to find that shelf and pull the right book out. That's the basic idea of encoding, storing, and retrieving information. Now, to understand this better, let's break down these three steps: encoding, storage, and retrieval, into a more familiar scenario. Picture yourself at a party. You're introduced to a new person. Let's call him Alex. When you hear his name, your brain is encoding that piece of information. In other words, it's transforming the sound Alex and the sight of his face into something the brain can store, some pattern of neurons firing, linking up with other pieces of information, and essentially creating a new record. If the conversation is meaningful, or if Alex says something funny or interesting, your brain might give extra attention to this memory. That extra attention, along with other factors, helps ensure that this newly formed memory gets stored more securely. Think of it as the difference between scribbling a phone number on a dirty napkin, which you might lose, versus adding it into the contacts of your phone. A more detailed, carefully encoded piece of information is easier to store and later recall. Now some time passes. A week later, you're walking down the street and you see Alex again, except you're having trouble remembering his name. That moment when you try to recall his name is the retrieval process. Sometimes it's instant, and sometimes it takes a few seconds, like rummaging through a mental filing cabinet. Eventually, you find it and say, "Hey, Alex," and he smiles back. This simple scenario shows us the heart of memory. Encode it first, store it away, and retrieve it when you need it. But why don't we always remember everything perfectly? This question leads us to the pioneering work of a German psychologist named Hermann Ebbinghaus, who lived in the late 19th and early 20th century. Ebbinghaus was the first person to study memory scientifically and methodically. He conducted experiments on himself, memorizing long lists of nonsense syllables, strings of letters that didn't form any familiar words, so that his own language skills wouldn't influence the results. Through countless hours of careful study, he uncovered some basic principles of how memory works. One of Ebbinghaus's most famous discoveries is what's now known as the forgetting curve. This curve shows how quickly we forget information over time if we do nothing to reinforce it. Imagine you learn something new today. According to the forgetting curve, your memory of that material starts to fade pretty quickly within the first few hours or days. Without reviewing it or connecting it to other knowledge, the memory trace in your mind weakens. This forgetting curve sounds grim, but there's a silver lining. Ebbinghaus also found that by reviewing material periodically, spreading out study sessions over time, you can drastically reduce how much you forget. Each time you revisit information, your brain refreshes that memory, strengthening the neural connections and making them more stable. This idea, which later became known as spaced repetition. By the way, a lot of people struggle to learn a language. As someone who has learned and passed the basic level exams in German, French, and Korean, I can tell you that brainwashing yourself by watching TV shows or comedy shows is way better than using flashcards. Now let's get back to the topic, memory. Take a step back from this historical perspective and consider memory in a broader sense. We know memory involves a lot of different brain regions working together. For instance, the hippocampus, a small seahorse-shaped structure deep inside your brain, plays a crucial role in encoding new memories. Without it, creating new long-term memories becomes incredibly difficult. Over time, memories aren't just stuck in one place. They spread out to different areas of the brain related to their content. Visual memories get stored in visual processing areas, sounds in auditory areas, and so forth. But the neat part is that memories aren't like little video recordings waiting to be played back. Instead, each time you recall something, your brain actually rebuilds it. Think of it as reassembling a puzzle. You're pulling together pieces, bits of color, sound, emotion from all over the brain. This process of reconstruction can introduce errors or distortions. That's why sometimes your memories change slightly over time, or why eyewitness accounts of the same event can differ from person to person. This reconstruction aspect of memory might sound like a design flaw. But think about it. Memory isn't just a snapshot of the past, it's a tool our minds use to predict and navigate the future. The flexibility of memory allows us to learn from our past experiences and apply that knowledge to new, unfamiliar situations. If we simply had perfect, unchanging records of everything we've seen or done, we might struggle to adapt when circumstances shift. The pliable nature of memory, while sometimes leading us astray, actually contributes to our survival and creativity. Now, consider the different types of memory. Not all memories are the same. You have sensory memory, short-term memory, working memory, and long-term memory, each playing a different role in how we handle information. Sensory memory is like an ultra-short snapshot, just a fraction of a second, that holds on to impressions from your senses. Short-term memory, also sometimes called working memory, lets you hold a few pieces of information in your mind temporarily, like the steps of a math problem you're trying to solve in your head. Long-term memory is where the more durable records reside. Within long-term memory, there are different categories. Episodic memories are those related to personal experiences, like your first day of school or your favorite birthday party. Semantic memories are more like general knowledge and facts, things you know but might not remember when or where you learned them, like the capital of France or the meaning of a word. Procedural memories involve how to do things, such as riding a bike or tying your shoelaces, skills that you perform without consciously thinking about every step. When we talk about encoding, storing, and retrieving these different types of memories, the brain uses slightly different networks. For example, procedural memories involve areas of the brain like the cerebellum and basal ganglia, which help coordinate movement and learned habits. Semantic and episodic memories rely heavily on the hippocampus and surrounding areas, especially when they're first formed. Over time, these memories get reorganized and moved into the cortex. Think of it as transferring files from a temporary, easily accessible folder to a permanent archive. Now let's bring it back to the big question. Why do we forget it all? If memory is so important, wouldn't it be better to remember everything perfectly? Well, not necessarily. Forgetting helps us focus on what matters most. If every single piece of information that ever entered your mind remained equally fresh and accessible, you'd be overwhelmed by trivial details. Forgetting allows the mind to clear out unneeded clutter. It's like occasionally cleaning your room so that you can easily find the things that truly matter. Forgetting is also influenced by factors like interference. Sometimes old memories can interfere with new ones, or new ones can make you lose track of old ones. If you change your email password, the memory of the old one might get in the way the next time you try to log in. Over time, as you use the new password more often, it becomes stronger, and the old one fades away. This interaction between new and old memories is one reason our mental library is never static. It's always in flux. Hermann Ebbinghaus's forgetting curve reminds us that without reinforcement, memories fade. But we can fight against this natural decay. Simple habits like reviewing information after learning it, spreading out study sessions, and connecting new facts to existing knowledge can help stabilize memories. The more personal and meaningful the information is to you, the more likely you are to recall it. If something makes you laugh, cry, or feel deeply curious, your brain often marks it as significant, improving your chances of remembering it later on. Let's talk about another intriguing aspect of memory: cues and context. Often, we remember things better when we're in the same environment or mood as when we first learned them. This is called context-dependent memory. For instance, if you learned a set of facts in a quiet library, you might recall them more easily when you're back in that same library setting. Similarly, emotional states can serve as memory cues. If you study Spanish vocabulary when you're feeling relaxed and happy, you might recall it more effectively when you're calm rather than anxious. These cues act like signposts in your brain, guiding the librarian toward the right shelf. Without them, retrieval might take longer, or you might draw a blank. That's one reason we sometimes struggle to remember something out of context. The memory is there, but the mental breadcrumbs that lead to it are missing. We've talked about forgetting and cues, but what about the opposite problem? Memories you can't shake off, even if you'd like to. Traumatic memories, for example, can sometimes become stuck on replay, intruding into your thoughts uninvited. This is a situation where memory's persistence can be painful. The mechanisms behind persistent, unwanted memories are complex, often involving heightened emotion and stress at the time of encoding. Therapeutic techniques aim to help individuals deal with these memories, either by reducing the distress they cause, or helping people reframe and better understand them over time. On a lighter note, not all strongly encoded memories are negative. Think of a really happy moment, your wedding day, the time you got a long-awaited promotion, or when you reunited with a dear friend. The strong emotions tied to these events help lock them into your memory. Years later, recalling these times can bring a smile to your face and warmth to your heart, acting as a source of comfort and identity. Memory also has a social function. Sharing stories with family and friends is a way to reinforce memories. Every time you retell a funny anecdote or a family legend, you're not only helping yourself remember it better, but also passing it on to others. These shared memories can help form and strengthen community bonds, building a collective sense of history and belonging. Culture, tradition, and identity are all intertwined with shared memory. As we dive deeper, it's worth noting that memory isn't just a human trait. Many other animals have forms of memory too, though ours is more complex. Birds remember where they store seeds, dogs respond to familiar commands, and even simple organisms can show forms of learned behavior. But human memory stands out for its ability to form richly detailed narratives, store abstract concepts, and imagine future scenarios, allowing us to learn from past mistakes and anticipate what might come next. So, what can we do to improve our memory in everyday life? One strategy is to engage in elaborative rehearsal. Instead of just repeating something over and over, try to connect it to something you already know. If you're learning a new fact about history, link it to a story or a visual image. If you're trying to remember someone's name, associate it with a characteristic of their face or personality. Another effective approach is the method of loci, an ancient technique where you imagine placing the items you want to remember in specific spots along a familiar route, like rooms in your house. Later, you mentally walk through that route to retrieve each item. Sleep also plays a crucial role in memory consolidation, the process by which memories become stable and long-lasting. During sleep, the brain reorganizes and strengthens newly formed memories. Getting enough quality rest can make a real difference in how well you remember and learn. In the end, our memories are an essential part of what makes us who we are. They give us continuity through time, stringing together the moments of our lives into a coherent story. Without memory, we lose our sense of identity and meaning. With it, we carry our past and use it to guide our future. So, the next time you struggle to remember a name, forget where you left your keys, or recall a cherished moment from childhood, remember, no pun intended, that the process unfolding inside your brain is incredibly complex, delicate, and vital. Each memory is a small miracle of chemistry, biology, and psychology working together. And just like taking care of a garden, if we nurture our memories, revisit them, and give them context and meaning, they will continue to grow, evolve, and enrich our lives. Thanks for joining me on this exploration of memory. I hope you've gained a deeper appreciation for the intricate processes that let us travel back in time within our own minds. If you found this helpful, consider giving the video a like, and if you want to learn more about other incredible stories, don't forget to subscribe. Let's keep exploring, learning, and remembering together.